All signs point to this for the Dallas Cowboys, as with roster cuts about to occur, a new report says that this former second-round pick will be gone before the preseason even starts. We tell you who this is and all the latest on the Dallas Cowboys right here on Cowboys Digest. Welcome in, everybody. I'm Jace Andrews. I appreciate you joining us. Before we get going, we've noticed that 61% of you watching these videos have not yet subscribed, and today is the day. If you want the latest on the Dallas Cowboys, especially as we inch closer to roster cuts and the preseason, and so many new reports coming out, obviously Micah Parsons' contract is a big talk. Well, we have your news every single step of the way. So hit that subscribe button. Let's get into the topic of today, as the Cowboys are predicted to cut ties with a second-round pick amid the Trevon Diggs news. Now, you're probably asking two questions from this headline. Who the heck is this second-round pick you speak of? And second of all, what is the latest on Trevon Diggs? Why is he saying there is news on him? Well, it's news, but it's limited news. That's where we go into the first report from John Conan of Heavy on Cowboys, saying, quote, with Trevon Diggs, an all-pro player in the secondary, likely out for some of the beginning of the season due to his knee injury, it remains uncertain what the Cowboys' plan is to do. However, when Diggs returns, or if the Cowboys find out that he could return sometime during the first few weeks of the campaign, it could have an impact on others on the Cowboys roster, end quote. So a couple of things to kind of put there. Obviously, the injury designations are very different, especially if he's going to be out for the first week and just that, or the first 4 weeks, because there are different situations and different roster classifications for them. Now, the Dallas Cowboys at the quarterback position are in an interesting slot because Trevon Diggs is potentially out for at least 1 or 2 weeks, maybe even more. Trevon Revel Jr., we don't know what the latest is on his. Obviously, we had the report talking about that he had a setback. That report has now been claimed to be false, so kind of throw that in the trash. And so we look at this quarterback room. They signed Robert Rochelle. What exactly is next to them? Well, Andrew Booth Jr., a guy who played some games for them last year, in fact, is on the chopping block, according to this report. He played 7 games last year for the Dallas Cowboys, accumulating 15 total tackles, 10 of them solo, and 1 pass deflection. Now, he played his previous 2 years in Minnesota, was coming in as a second-round pick to Minnesota. And so for the Cowboys, it's kind of an interesting situation here, because in their cornerback room, they have a lot of talented players. Obviously, Deron Bland is going to be your number 1 starter, as long as Trevon Diggs is still out. Trevon Diggs will be your number 2. Besides that, though, there's a lot of interesting names. They signed 3 free agent quarterbacks. CJ Goodwin, saw him, and he has a lot of years of experience in the NFL. Carrier Elam, obviously he has a lot of years of experience, 4 years of experience in the NFL. So it's something to note that they obviously weren't satisfied with Andrew Booth Jr.'s play when they drafted a cornerback in the 3rd round. Now, granted, Trevon Revel Jr. was the best pick available in the 3rd round, so I think that's more what it's about than getting a quarterback. They then signed Robert Rochelle recently, and obviously the 3 free agent signings at quarterback. They don't think that Andrew Booth is that qualified, I think, is what that is saying. And so now we sit here and talk about Andrew Booth in a sense that it doesn't seem like he's going to be on the roster. And obviously, Trevon Revel Jr. kind of comes into the topic here because if he is healthy, I think it jumps Booth. Douglas Fritch of Clutch Points also has this, saying, quote, the Cowboys picked Trevon Revel in round 3. It's true Revel is trying to come back from an injury, but his abilities when healthy put him in front of Booth, end quote. Okay, so you're talking about a guy who was a second-round pick, who is now behind Deron Bland, Trevon Diggs, obviously, and behind Trevon Revel Jr. if he is available to play. You also signed 3 free agent quarterbacks. It doesn't seem like he fits into this at all. And so what is the move for the Cowboys? Do they cut him now? Do they wait for the preseason? Well, that's where the report kind of goes into a little bit of an interesting direction. And I do want to spend a moment talking about the Cowboys' moves that kind of led to this. So we go into the report again from Douglas Fritch of Clutch Points, saying the Cowboys also added 3 undrafted free agents at the cornerback position. There are plenty of signs. They weren't satisfied with the play of Booth in 2024, like I've said, but the injury status of Revel and Trevon Diggs could give Booth a second chance to show what he's got, end quote. And so for now, the prediction stands still. If Trevon Diggs or Trevon Revel Jr. is healthy, Andrew Booth and Robert Rochelle are the first 2 out. However, if it stands that Trevon Revel Jr. will start on the PUP list, if it stands that Trevon Diggs will not be ready for the start of the season, Booth might have that opportunity to come in and prove his worth. And so what exactly is the move for the Dallas Cowboys? Well, he wasn't exactly great last year, and according to PFF grades. He was actually one of the worst quarterbacks in the NFL. Now, forgive me, I'll kind of lean in here just so I get the right numbers, but he was 213th out of 222 quarterbacks in the NFL in his overall PFF grade, which was a 35.6. His run defense grade was great, but I don't care too much about that in the quarterback room. And then his coverage grade was 219th out of 222 quarterbacks at 28.7. Booth is not a good cornerback. He just isn't. And so now it's time to let him go. Especially when, if Trevon Revel Jr. is healthy or not, I don't think Booth has a piece really in this. Especially when you think about the point that if Micah is back, the secondary is stronger anyway. Douglas Fritz of Clutch Points says this, saying, quote, "Of course, the secondary could be stronger if the Cowboys get the contract situation worked out with Parsons, and he displays that type of production that, again, disrupts opposing offenses." And obviously, that's a huge thing with Micah Parsons, and kind of takes the turn into the video of where Micah's contract is such a big thing for this defense, because if they cannot get it done within the next month, within the next 2 months, it becomes a little bit of a tough time for the Dallas Cowboys, because they have to make decisions on who to cut, who to keep, and Micah Parsons changes this defense. He does. And so the questions about who gets cut, who gets kept, becomes a little bit more hard to wrap the head around. And so, what exactly are the Cowboys going to do? Do they cut Booth now? Do they wait? It's a large question to kind of talk about and really kind of dissect in so many manners. Now, Matt Eberflus also talked about this, and he said this, saying, quote, "For him, you have to move this guy around. Now, what's great about our current roster is that we have other rushers now that can rush. So to pay attention to one particular rusher is going to be more difficult than if you just had one-on-one side. That's going to be a good thing too," end quote. So it's obvious he's going to move Micah Parsons around and is expecting him to be there, which again changes the layout here for Andrew Booth, and wondering if he's going to stay with the Dallas Cowboys or if he will be cut before the preseason even starts. Now, again, Trevon Revel Jr. has a big point in this, because if he is healthy and Micah is signed, there is no possible way Andrew Booth makes this roster. 0%. Because you have a cornerback now that jumps him automatically. You have a guy who disrupts the offense and can make the secondary better, to where you don't need a guy who maybe has some upside, but overall in his NFL career, his PFF grades have been terrible. And so Trevon, as we kind of go into this last report here from PFF, saying, quote, "Revel earned an outstanding 83.5 PFF coverage grade with 9 pass breakups in 2023. That was his first season as a starter, and through 3 games in 2024, he carried an even better 85.4 PFF coverage grade and was likely on his way to a first-round selection," end quote, before his, of course, ACL tear. And so the question for the Cowboys is, what is the health? And that is such a big part of this team. What is the health of Trevon Diggs? What is the health of Trevon Revel Jr.? Because those two pieces really tell us a lot about the cornerback room. If you've been watching our videos, you know that there are 3 positions right now that the Dallas Cowboys are looking to work on. And one of them, they all have different reasons because of it. The cornerbacks, strictly because of injuries. They trust Deron Bland. They trust Trevon Diggs. They trust Trevon Revel. But Trevon Diggs and Trevon Revel are injured. So what is the next move from there? The running back position. Miles Sanders, could he be cut? Deuce Vaughn, could he be cut? Is Javonte Williams going to be that guy? It's a bunch of question marks to look at. And so the defensive tackle is also a part, but now we just sit here and wait and try and figure out what happens. That is it for me right here on Cowboys Digest, and we will see you next time. Peace out from Dallas.